Hey guys, it's Sparks. I wanted to make a quick video here on a test series that I did regarding priming, painting, and top coats. This test is a very small test. I used a few of my favorite primers, my favorite paint, and my favorite top coats, and did different combinations to show you guys the flexibility, creasing, cracking, wrinkling, things like that that you will get on EVA foam if you use different primers and paints, etc. So what I had done was I took some 4mm EVA foam and I primed the bottom part of each piece with my three favorite primers currently. This bottom one is Flex Bond, we have Creature Cast Rubber, and then Gorilla brand wood glue. And here's what those products look like. Here's the Creature Cast semi-rigid neoprene rubber coating. We have the Roscoe Flex Bond, which is, it's very similar to white glue, wood glue, any sort of PVA glue. It's just a glue for the most part. And then the Gorilla brand wood glue. So I did 2 coats of all of these. With Creature Cast Rubber, which is this middle one, usually I would do more coats than 2, but for this test I wanted to keep the number of coats consistent because I also wanted to see which things would make my process more time consuming. I used Creature Cast Rubber on my Leafeon costume, and what I had discovered, being my first time using that product, is that it's pretty impossible to get a very, very smooth surface when you are using this product without doing an extra step. When I use wood glue, I actually don't have to sand it or anything before painting it. When I used Creature Cast Rubber, I found that I was getting little pimpling bubbles, little just imperfections, and I did not like the surface at all. If you do enough coats, like 6 coats, you can hand sand this stuff. I found it faster and easier to alcohol sand it or chemical sand it with acetone, and then I was able to get a really clean, smooth surface. I didn't start getting the rough surface until about 4 coats in, but I ended up doing like 4 or 5 coats on most of that costume and did end up having to acetone sand it. So that's a whole nother step with this primer. There are a lot of other primers that are flexible that a lot of people use on their armors, like Plastidip. The one thing I don't like is spray can products, so I do not use Plastidip myself. So I'm always looking for different primers to use on my projects, especially if I want some flexibility in them. So after I primed these pieces of foam, I then went around and painted the bottom half of them in this off-white color. It is Americana, Decoart Americana acrylic paint in buttermilk, light buttermilk. On the left side here, it is the plain base paint, 2 coats. The other half, I added this fabric medium into the paint. Now it did lighten the color just a teeny little bit. You might be able to see the variation in the colors here for those with a sharp eye. It also made it slightly less opaque, so I would have to do 3 layers to get a nice solid covering, where on this side I pretty much got a nice solid covering with 2. Decoart is the paint that I use on pretty much all of my costumes, whether it be matte colors, satin colors, or metallics. They are my go-to when it comes to painting my costumes. So then I broke this down. Each one is broken down into 5 different sealers. On the very, very left, I left it unsealed, which I have done many times. Leafeon, Mystic Kingdoms Arthas. I wanted a very, very matte finish, and at the time I was never able to find a good matte sealer, because when I used glossy, I always use this Varathane polyurethane, but it does not come in a matte. It comes in semi-gloss, high gloss, satin, stuff like that. So that was always my go-to finish for metal shiny armor. For those costumes, for Leafeon and most of my organic-y looking costumes, I ended up just not sealing them, because even spray finishes that would say that they were matte were, they'd end up being shiny a little bit, so I didn't want to use them. For this, I did test a few matte finishes, and I also did test some things that are semi-gloss or slightly shiny. The second top coat here is the Decoart Ultra Matte Varnish, which is here. It is very, 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 very matte. There's no shine to it. As you can see, these sections here have a bit of a shine, but on the right here, but these sections on the left of each sample are very, very matte. So this second little section here is the Ultra Matte. The third is something called Soft Touch Varnish, also by Decoart. And these are brush-on varnishes. I have been recommended things like clear Plastidip and things to get a matte clear coat on top of stuff, but as I said, I do not like spray products. So I try to avoid them as much as possible. So I'm always looking for brush-on products, basically, to seal things and keep them matte. The next one is the Varathane. I did the semi-gloss because that's pretty much as, there's satin and semi-gloss. Those are the least shiny of those sealers. I did use the high gloss version of this on like my Master Chromie Gold Armor. It does crack if you put too many coats on. It loses its flexibility, and because it's a polyurethane, it basically puts a plastic coating over your entire project. So then the last section is Pledge Floor Care, which is a product that I have used for many, many years because I used to do polymer clay art, which is also how I got into using the Varathane, because both the Varathane brush on polyurethane and the Pledge Floor Care, which used to be called Future Floor Finish or something like that, are two products that you can actually use to make polymer clay shiny that don't react to the clay over time and make it sticky. So those are the products that I used on these 3 samples. Then what I did was I allowed it to dry. I let it dry, then I let it sit. And I had it out here in my very, very warm garage for several days. It's about 85 to 95 degrees out in my garage most of the time because I live in Arizona, and it's not air conditioned. Then I did bring them into my house and allowed them to cure in my house for, several days. So these samples are almost 2 months old now. And after they've been drying and all this, sitting around for a while to make sure that if they were going to get brittle, I would know. So at that point, after they were fully cured and everything, what I did was just destroyed the foam. I crunched it, I wrinkled it, I smashed it, I did everything I needed to do on these pieces of foam that you could potentially ever have done to your costume. People are always worried about their paint cracking, their paint wrinkling and things like that. So, these are my final results from this test. If you look here at the Flex Bond, one of the reasons I don't use Flex Bond a lot is because it's very water soluble. When I paint, I do a lot of weathering washes, realistic textures, so I use a lot of excess water doing my washes and stuff and Flex Bond, when it gets too wet, it'll start peeling up off of your foam. So if you do paint that way, if you do more of like a watercolor style painting, if you do a lot of heavy water washes, don't use Flex Bond because it will just dissolve and wipe right up, especially if you're doing like the brush it on and then wipe it off with a paper towel method. You're just going to have to reprime it and start all over again. I had to do that on Malfurion. So this is what happened. After all that damage that I did to them, this is what happened to the paint on the Flex Bond sample. Now you'll see there is a section here that has a lot less cracking right in here. It has a lot less cracking than all the other areas on this. If we come up to the top, we'll see, that's the section labeled ST. Now, I'm not going to talk about that yet because we're going to keep going. This is the Creature Cast Rubber. Now, it is a very, very flexible primer, and if you were to use a paint that is known for being flexible, like Angelus Leather paint, you're going to have a much better result when you are flexing and bending your foam here. I did use the Angelus Leather paint in combination with the Creature Cast Rubber on Leafeon's petal skirt, and it can be basically rolled up and nothing happens to the paint. So, but it's a much more expensive paint than the Decoart acrylics that I typically use. So again, this is Creature Cast Rubber, and I'm not saying here that the primers have cracked at all. I can't really tell you that because it's underneath the paint. But you can see, sorry, I wish my camera was focusing a bit better here. You can see all of the cracking the whole way. Now again, there's a section, especially on this side with the, this is the side that is the Decoart Americana and fabric medium. You can see, once again, there's a section in here, right here, that has a lot less cracking than everywhere else. Okay, now, as many, many people know if you followed me over the years, I am an advocate for wood glue. I love wood glue, specifically the Gorilla brand, which I switched to a couple years ago. So, this is what happened after I bent and destroyed the wood glue. Nothing happened. There's like no cracks, nothing. Yes, it's wrinkly, which with a little bit of heat I could probably get some of those wrinkles out, but you saw how much I was bending that up. It went through crazy amounts of damage, and there are no wrinkles here, or sorry, no cracks in the paint here. So the paint adheres to the wood glue better than all the other primers that I tried. And again, on this side, there is some cracking in here. This section here is the Varathane. It didn't really crack on this side. Sorry, I'm trying to get it to focus. It didn't really crack on this side, but this side was the side with the fabric media mixed into the paint, and you can see there is hairline cracks all through that Varathane. So that combination of products I would not use. The Varathane polyurethane and the wood glue and the fabric medium in the Decoart paint. So there is definitely some cracking in there, and along the sides of that section there's a long crack. There is a little bit of cracking right here through the bottom, but that's, I think, because it's at the very edge of this piece. But so much less cracking and destruction happened on the wood glue piece. Now, when I was mentioning before, there's this section on each sample that cracked a lot less than all the other ones. Now, that product that I use as a top coat in that section, this section right here, you can see it's completely matte, very much like the section next to it, but has far, far, far less cracking. That product is the Soft Touch Varnish from Decoart. Now, this is my first time even using this on anything, so I had no idea what to expect. I don't know what its, typical usage is. I don't know if it's made for, canvas products, wood products. Like, I don't know what most people would purchase this for. All I know is that there's something about it that, when placed on top of these primers and the Decoart Americana paints with and without the fabric mediums, it prevented so much cracking. So I'm going to be using this a lot. Now, the one thing that makes this product kind of weird is that it makes it soft. It literally is soft touch. It makes what you paint it on have almost like a velvety softness. Now, you can't see any difference. It just looks like matte paint. But when you touch it, it's very, very soft. So it is a completely matte varnish that you can put on your cosplay pieces. And I will likely be using this on the stone looking areas, the parts that aren't metal, the parts that aren't shiny and glowy on Muradin. I'm going to be using this because of how well it prevented cracking and how matte the finish actually is. So I'm super, super impressed with this product. I think this little jar is $11. I only did 2 coats, I believe, on these pieces here. And so I highly recommend at least trying it out, seeing if you like this product. It could save you. It could keep your product, your finished product, from cracking while wearing it. Because yeah, even these ones where it cracked, like crazy in other places, this section here, it's like there's no cracks in some spots. So my conclusion is that I'm gonna stick with wood glue. I'm sorry, Plastida people. I'm sorry, Flex Bond people. I know there's a bazillion other primers and paints and things you can use, but for effectiveness, longevity, ease of use, wood glue is self-leveling. You don't have to sand it. It's flexible enough. I mean, yes, you get wrinkles, but it's flexible enough that it does not crack when you are using it. I have pieces, my original Chromie, my Cenarius wood armor, all of that stuff was all primed with wood glue and has lasted this long. And people ask me all the time, doesn't it crack? Well, yeah, there's costumes I've had for 7 years that have little cracks in them here and there that I've had to repair. The one costume that I did prime with wood glue that I have had cracking problems with is Arthas. And I have come to the conclusion that it is because I mixed acrylic paint into the wood glue. I did that to make it easier to see because wood glue has a little bit of a yellow tint, but for the most part it's clear. So when you're painting your primer on, it can be a little bit hard to see, where you've already primed, where you still need to prime. So I was adding some acrylic paint into the wood glue as I was priming, and I believe that caused the wood glue to be brittle. Because when I initially wore it, it was flexible enough. But now that costume has been sitting on my shelf for 2.5 years or so, and when I pulled it out to try to wear it again, there are some places that I needed to flex, like the belt needed to flex to open, the chest armor needed to flex to open, and those areas did get some cracking. And I believe it's due to that because through these tests, these things have been sitting for months. In my house, in my hot garage, wherever, and beaten all to hell many, many times, and I am not having the issues with the wood glue. No cracking in the glue itself. So yeah, and I also do recommend the Gorilla brand. The Elmer's Wood Glue Max is what I used to use, and it was great. And I have pieces, like I said, Heroes of the Storm Chromie, Cenarius, those are earlier costumes of mine, and they're still around and still being worn and still fine as far as like the armor is concerned, and they were primed with the Elmer's Wood Glue Max. But I definitely prefer the Gorilla because it's just smoother, takes less coats. So yeah, I just wanted to make that quick video for you guys. It's something that we've talked a lot about on stream. I keep bringing these samples out for people to be like, look, this is wood glue. Look at this thing. But I do know there's other things. I know there's different flexible paints that could, if you want to use Flex Bond, if you want to use Creature Cast Rubber or Plastidip or whatever, and you want to counter the cracking paint by using a different paint, then that's one thing. You can use the Angelus leather paint because it's meant to be flexible. It's made for painting leather, so it's made to bend and flex. I know there's people talking about flex paint, hex flex paint, all different kinds of primers, paints, whatever, and I can't test them all. I just like using what is available to me locally usually, so that I don't have to wait for things to arrive from Amazon or whatever. I can just go to Michael's, I can go to Joann's, Walmart, wherever, and buy my Gorilla, buy my Decoart, buy my, Varnish, whatever, and be done with it. So that is why I have chosen these products. Besides the fact that Flex Bond is too water soluble for me, for my painting style, and I don't like spray products. So anything clear coats, Plastidip, whatever, I'm not going to use them if they come in a spray can. There's always exceptions to that, but for the most part, I'm going with things I can easily get. So this is my clear winner. Wood glue, soft touch varnish from Decoart Americana Decoart paint. I did not really notice too much of a difference on this sample between the side with the fabric medium and the side without the fabric medium. Obviously the Varathane section did crack more on the side with the fabric paint in it, but other than that, I didn't really notice a difference. I am going to be using it in most of my paint for Muradin, just to give a little bit more flexibility. We'll see how it ends up long term. Because I have a bunch of these. They were sent to me by Decoart, so I want to use them and give myself that little bit of extra flexibility. But yeah, wood glue, winner for me. So I hope that was helpful for some of you who I have talked to on stream and wanted to see these samples, closer and have me talk about them a bit more. And I love doing these testing type things, experimenting. I am always talking about testing and making sure your products work together. Spray products are a lot of times like oil-based and have chemicals in the aerosol and things like that can react with different brands. So, testing what the three things that you're going to use, primer, paint, top coat, make sure that they all work together. Don't assume and start painting your project and then have some awful reaction between spray paint brands or top coats. Most of the stuff I use is water-based, not oil-based. Nothing comes in spray cans and stuff. So, like, even the Varathane polyurethane is a water-based polyurethane. So most water-based products will play nice with each other, but test. Just, it doesn't take very long. Just do some tests. Make sure you're not going to get a horrible reaction. Test the flexibility of the products you want to use. So, if you have to be extra careful about bending over, sitting because it's going to crack your paint or something like that. I do tend to build my costumes with knowing that I'm, going to be pretty rigid all day. I'm not going to make something typically that needs to flex very much, besides maybe a belt having to spread open a bit in the back so that I can put it on, or a chest armor that needs to open up in the back, and so it will have to flex a little on the sides. But for the most part, I keep in mind that armor's armor. It's not supposed to flex. Now, something like Leafeon was not traditional style armor, so I had a feeling, because I was making it out of thin foam, I was only using 6mm foam for most of it, it was going to flex, it was going to bend, and that pedal skirt was huge, so I knew I was going to be, bumping things and all that stuff. So that's why I made sure I use a primer and paint combination that was going to hold up if I were to smash into people with my giant pedals. So I used the Creature Cast rubber and the Angelus leather paint, and it's held up wonderfully. But like I said, Angelus leather paint, you're going to spend $8, $10, $15 depending on the size bottle, where Decoart, you can usually get the little bottles for like $1.50 or something like that. You're not going to be spending quite as much on the Decoart or regular craft acrylics you can get at the craft store, where the Angelus leather paint and the Creature Cast rubber primer also is not cheap. These big bottles are like $75. You can get a very, very small size for $25. But then they also recommend that you get the thickener and stuff like that. So that's not exactly like the cheapest. The Flex Bond is about $45, I think, $35 for this big bottle. It's been a while since I bought it, but it's a great primer if you don't do my type of painting, if you don't use a lot of water when you're painting. So for me, sticking with the 3. I don't know how many projects I will use this matte stuff on, this soft touch varnish. I am still going to be looking for, like, I really like the Pledge Future Floor Finish, Pledge Floor Care, this stuff, for kind of a very, very, very subtle shine. It's very nice. Varathane, I'm probably going to stop using Varathane. I loved it for years, but because there are other options, risking the cracking is not worth it. So, I mean, I can look into different flexible clear coats. I've heard things about Groombashers, whatever. Like, there's a ton of different products you can use. So this is just a sampling of a few of them, and I hope that was helpful for you guys. And I will see you on next stream. Bye.